Hi, I'm Josh McDonald.
And I'm Miranda Materi, and we are Hand Therapy Academy.
Let's chat a little bit. We've had the opportunity to be in some other people's clinics and kind of see other people posting online about what their splinting setup or their therapy setup looks like. And sometimes we see people out there doing the best work with kind of a Spartan setup. And it got us thinking, like, what's the base requirement that you need in order to do what we do? But then also, like, what should you expect from your employer as like a, listen, I could do it with that, but this is really what would provide a better patient experience. So Marina, what do you feel like? Maybe let's talk about splinting specifically. Is kind of a base minimum that you feel like a therapist needs in order to get the job done.
Yeah, I think one thing is a good pair of scissors, and that's important for two reasons. I think getting a good edge on the splint, especially since we're charging a lot of money for these splints, but also to protect the therapist. If you don't have good scissors, you're more likely to get CMC arthritis, maybe some deep veins, things like that. So I would absolutely start with a good pair of scissors, and I don't think they cost that much. Another thing would be a decent way to make the splint in a hot water bath. So I have seen clinics use the hydroculator. Um, and we've even done this when our split pan is down or being cleaned. And you certainly can use it. But you could also get a nice hot water bath or a skillet for not that expensive. So I think as a therapist, I would want more of a splinting pan of some sort. And we know that these are very hard to find right now, right? Like you can't just go to Performance Health or North Coast and buy a splinting pan. And I think you have more experience with this because you've talked to a couple of the reps. So I'll let you kind of talk to it. But I don't know if it's because of COVID or why can't we find good splinting pans?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the big producers or the big carriers of all this stuff has realized that we're a niche as hand therapists. And so they're just not selling enough of those products to warrant keeping them in stock. And so the company, I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, that made all of the splint pans that we have all had for decades that were all sitting on our counters, they just don't make them anymore. And so there's this alternative now that was this, it's like we took and shoved as much technology into this thing. It's supposed to be self-cleaning, and there's like special timers on it. And then so I talked to a rep for one of these companies last year at ASHT, I think, and he said, "Oh, we've got second generation out because first generation, like fuzz was getting caught and it was clogging it, and because the debris that comes off of splints we have to put back in there. Ultimately, those things are very expensive too, thousands of dollars for those because there's so much technology. It's just hard to justify for either a small clinic like ours or a hospital when they're looking at the money that comes out of your department to warrant thousands of dollars on this thing that then needs a ton of maintenance. What we've fallen back on, I have a hard time justifying charging hundreds of dollars for a splint that came out of an electric skillet from Target. So what we've done is we found on Amazon we can get these warming trays. Like if you go to a conference or something and they have like food set out and there's all these stainless steel warming trays with water in them, and then they put the trays of food on top of that that's set on top. All I need is one that has a lid, and I don't even need the food holders. I just put water in the bottom and find and mark on the dial where the right temperature is, set it to that when I come in the morning or on a timer, and that keeps water warm for me. I just have to make sure it stays full and doesn't like dry out and ruin the device. But those are, gosh, I want to say $150 for a decent size one of those, and that's what we have in one of our clinics because I wasn't dropping thousands of dollars on a splint pan.
Well, and you can't really even find a splint pan. I mean, you can find those high technology ones, but not like we used to use. So I'm with you on that. And I think some of the older pans that were manufactured by North Coast were actually like those warmers. So I think that's more where the idea came from. I will say that when you do order them from Amazon, not all of them are equal. So if you get one that doesn't heat up high enough, don't give up. There's
Yeah.
definitely brands that heat up to the right temperature. So because I have ordered one, I'm like, oh, this didn't get hot enough. Well, there are ones that get hotter. So
Yeah. And usually on the listing, you can see like what temperature it can get to. So I look for a couple of things. I look for the size of it, making sure it's something that's big enough or not too big for my space. The temperature can go to, does it have a lid? Because I don't want this evaporating off and away. And then unfortunately, because their links changed, I went to go buy the same one again and that link was gone. So I had to go hunting again. But that's a reasonable option. Just make sure your temperatures are checked regularly.
yeah. And then you can go if you like are desperate or you're in a big metro area, some of the like chef stores. Like we have a huge restaurant supply store by my house, and they sell them as well. So those
Nice.
are other options of finding them.
Okay.
So I think that's a definite necessity. Scissors,
I
something
think,
to
go
protect
ahead.
the patient's skin when you're
Yeah.
making the splints. So some type of stockinette.
Yeah. I think quality adhesive Velcro and strapping Velcro. I think that's something that is as important as quality splinting material. That is sometimes 50% of the patient's skin interaction, and having poor quality old stuff that's gotten crusty and is dried out, sticky, that won't stay on. And so you're fighting with that and have to keep coming back. Having quality product will help justify both the cost and the patient's experience, and it'll be a positive experience instead of a negative one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If you have the Velcro that's not sticking, or you don't know, because some Velcro you can heat up with a heater and some you can't, right? So it's knowing which Velcro do you have and how do you apply it and making sure you're applying it correctly.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
people think, oh, this is just regular Velcro, I'll stick it on. Well, actually, no, you have to heat it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it won't stay well unless you heat it up. And on some materials, on the splinting material, I may have to prep the material itself to get the adhesive past that layer of coating on the outside that makes it shiny. So knowing how to make sure your adhesive stays on is important.
And if you need that information, I would reach out to your rep of who you buy your supplies from, and they have that information. Is this one I heat up? Is this what I don't? Especially, and even with your thermoplastic materials, what is the prep for it? And that's free. So,
Yeah. I would also say a station with organization, and this is maybe a little bit more on the therapist. Some of us are a little bit less type A, and you've got a drawer that you open and explodes out strapping material, and you just yank out scraps and pieces that you need. I'm all for being frugal and saving decent, usable scraps, but there's something about the patient sitting there. And if this splinting concept is an afterthought, it really compromises the legitimacy of what the service we're providing and our skill set. If they see this as like, oh, this isn't like an established thing you do regularly. This is kind of, oh, hold on a minute. I got to go find a scrap of this and find a scrap of that. And let me open up this drawer and things explode everywhere. Like having it be an established thing is really a big, in my mind, is a big aspect.
yeah, I think so. So, some type of splinting cart. And I've seen people get creative and use different things. So, I don't think you have to spend a ton of money, but I think having something that you put your splinting pan on and something that's organized. I think, Josh, you were sharing with me, you saw a video of someone having their splinting pan on the floor.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't even a splinting pan. It was that electric skillet. And listen, if that's all you have access to and you're doing the best you can, I understand. We don't all have great situations, but I felt for this therapist because not only was he using an electric skillet to make a relatively large splint, but it was on the floor. And I thought, oh, this is not okay for this. Like the employer needs to do better in this situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. They
yeah.
need to prop that up on something.
Yeah. Well, and I
Was
think sometimes too, it's us being willing to go to our employer and saying, like, we can bill significant amounts of money for this. And one splint will pay for a reasonable option for me for a splinting pan, will pay for a cart. So let's take one splint's revenue and buy me a $60 pair of Ginger scissors and a $100 warming tray that I can use and a $60 Amazon cart. And now I've got a splinting station that makes this look legitimate, that doctors won't hear negative feedback from the patients when they go back.
Yeah, because when the patient gets that bill and I was like, why was my insurance charged $400 for the splint? And you're doing it on a skillet on the floor. I do think that says something. I mean, I'm all about being creative, but I
Yeah.
think you're right.
And again, that's not on the therapist. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. And I'm sure they would step into some of the awesome splinting setups in the country and be like, oh my gosh, this is like luxury. It's not their fault. Their employer needs to do better for them.
Or some type of cabinetry too. I've seen people have different shelving systems, where they can open it up and all their splinting stuff is. So I think just you can be creative and find solutions that still look professional without spending a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you consider some of the hardware, the thumb screws and the Phoenix outriggers and the dynamic extensions, do you consider that a necessity that every therapist should have on hand?
I think it depends on the skill level of your therapist. I've seen some really amazing custom outriggers made. So and I think it depends on like if it's a MCP arthroplasty. So I think it just depends. I think you have to know your therapist, but I think if you're new and you might need some of those outriggers and hinges and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
What
It's
about you?
it's possible to make those things in a pinch. When I was in the wrong office and had the wrong supplies, I made an outrigger out of thermoplastic, and it was perfect for the patient. It worked just fine. So it's not necessarily a have to have item, but it's helpful. And again, to have it in some kind of organization, so you're not rifling through and mix matching stuff, but do the best with what you've got. If you can find some of those things, that'll make your job so much easier if you have some of those outrigger items in hand.
And they have to be pretty precise. So I think you have to have a high skill level if you don't have those tools. But if you have them, they can help you make your device or your orthosis really precise with the angles and the line of pull.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So if you have other thoughts on what's maybe a necessity, or if you have questions about any of the stuff we mentioned, where to get good scissors from or anything like that, certainly reach out to us. info@handtherapy.com is our email, or you can reach us on social media, Hand Therapy Academy.